Bruchim habayim, welcome back. This is great fun. Should we sing Hava Nagila together? What should we do? I think we're going to have to get to work because there's so many things I want to cover today. Oh my goodness. And somebody asked the difference between the tet and the tav, and I wasn't going to do that. Oh my gosh. Okay, maybe we'll get to that. Yeah, we'll get to it when we get to the tav. Okay. I will later on have a look if there's time at chat questions, but you know you're welcome to write to me at, I'll put it on the screen later, aleph.betwithperetz@yahoo.com. Okay, let's get to work. Are you ready? We're going to share a screen of the letters we learned yesterday, right? Didn't we just finish the letters yesterday? We learned kuf or kof, which the Orientalists, although that's a term they can't call themselves anymore, will transliterate with a Q because it's originally a K, but for us it's just another K sound, just like a kaf. We learned resh, and I explained that it's made with your uvula here. That sounds like a very sensitive word, but it just means that little thing that hangs there. Shin with the dot on the right, and sin with the dot on the left, a sh and a s sound. What's that about? What that's about is that, you know what? I didn't write it into do today. Let's talk about it right now. Shin and sin must have been originally one sound in the world of whoever invented this alphabet, and somehow got differentiated into two. We saw how in one dialect at least of biblical Hebrew, there was a tribe, the Ephraimites, who pronounced the shin just like a sin. Well, if I promised you Welsh, right? Anybody know what a double L is in Welsh, like Lloyd, or an FL, like the late Mr. Floyd? That is a sound that represents the sound in Welsh that we don't have in English or in Hebrew anymore, but it was in Proto-Semitic, in the mother of the Semitic languages, and that is a lateral fricative. That's something you can say in polite company. Lateral fricative is th. The sound is fricative because it's just coming out without being blocked, and it's coming out laterally from the two sides of my tongue. Th. So Floyd is the name, actually. Floyd, which is a little weird, I know. And once upon a time, there was just one sound, and they got distinguished into two. But later then, the alphabet was invented, so people had to mark off which one was which with the dots. So on the right, it's a sh, on the left, it's a sa. This is the letter tav we learned yesterday, and that it's a T sound, whether it has a dagesh, a dot in it or not. That used to be, we're going to get to those a little bit later, but that is a different sound than the tet that we learned. I should write a tet in here somewhere, but it's a little bit difficult to do that without messing everything up. With the letter tet, with the tet top, was a different kind of sound. It was a ta. In Arabic and in other Semitic languages, it's ta. It's much harder, and it gives an O shape to the vowels around it. And this was either a v with a dagesh in it or a th, unvoiced th, but it was a th sound originally. And we use it to mark a th today. If you want, we're actually going to see this later, but if you want to mark, transcribe into Hebrew something that has th, then you just use a tav with an apostrophe after, which is called a geresh in Hebrew, and that indicates th, because there are words that you want to transcribe, right, from other languages, including from English, into Hebrew. That's how we mark th today, the tav. But otherwise, it's simply a tav. Okay, that's a little more than we did last time. How could I have forgotten to? Maybe it has something to do with the noticeable lack of finesse about politesse, that two French words, that Israelis are famous for. But I should have taught you the word toda, which is thank you, right? And I should have given you a chance to sound it out first, right? T-O-D-A. And the hey at the end, in this case, is a silent letter. It was there originally to mark the vowels. Here's a word you might run into from time to time. There's a town just to the south of me, of which this is half of the name. It is Lechem. Lechem, or I'm being purist, Lechem. Lechem is bread. Those of you familiar with some of the basics of Jewish liturgy will know Hamotzi Lechem min haaretz. The blessing on eating bread is praising the Lord for bringing forth bread from the earth. Hamotzi Lechem min haaretz. And Bethlehem, which is so close that you can walk to it in about half an hour from my house. It says something about the nature of our life here that I haven't been there since the 1970s. Bethlehem is known in Hebrew as Beit Lechem, house of bread. Sarah Safti wanted to know in an email, why did we learn Rivka and Rachel? And we didn't learn Leah actually either, by the way, so I don't think. But we left out her namesake, her biblical namesake, Sarah, which seems something like a grand lady, maybe a queen or a minister type, or the modern Hebrew word sar is used for a government minister, for example. That's biblical Sarah's name, Sarah. How about this? On this one, even though it's not the same vowel twice, the accent is on the first syllable. And doesn't it look pretty? You know, from here up, it's all the same. It's just, it looks like top of a sheen, maybe. It is, yeah, you know it, yayin, yayin. How you doing with reading this one? Speaking of yayin, the word for a grapevine is a geffen. And some of you who are familiar with a different one of the benedictions over consuming stuff in Judaism are saying, but we don't say, we say, Borei Pari, praise are you, Lord of the universe, who's creator of the fruit of the vine. And we say it as Hagafen and not Hagefen, unless you're Sfaradi. Sfaradi will say Hagefen. What's that about? Well, Gefen, in a final pausal form, can become Gafen, but that's a biblical thing. And the early Jewish prayer attempted to replicate biblical Hebrew, so they use that particular thing. But in common everyday speech today, one would only see Gefen for a grapevine. It's also not terribly common, but not unheard of girl's name these days. And here's another one of those words, speaking of the lack of kind of grease on the wheels of social relationships and anonymous relationships. A word that Canadians are famous for, but not Israelis, slicha, right? It's a common noun for forgiveness, and it's how you request forgiveness. Oh, so sorry. You know, what the generic term for a group of Canadians is, you know, like a pride of lions. It's an apology of Canadians, I'm pretty sure. That's why I use them as an example. Okay, that doesn't count, Dorothy, as a dad joke. That's just a bad joke. A few place names. And this one in just a fun font, because it's a fun place. Can you get it? That is a tav. That is a lamed, even though its head has been crushed down there. Tel, and that is an aleph, and a vet, and a yod, and a vet. Tel Aviv. Tel Aviv has an interesting history. It's actually a place name in Hebrew, a Hebrew word for a name for a place in Babylonia. But the word tel, usually in Hebrew at least, I don't know what it meant in Akkadian over there, but a tel is a mound of previous civilizations, you know, where archaeologists want to go and dig. Aviv means spring. So it became, that Hebrew name for a place in Babylonia, it became the title for Theodor Herzl's novel, in which he imagines a Jewish state in the future, written at the end of the 19th, or the end of the 19th, the very beginning of the 20th century. He called it Alt Neuland, Old New Country, and somebody very, very clever and erudite gave it the Hebrew title Tel Aviv, and the book gave its name to the town, the city. And here's one I like, which I had to put in the most classical font, right? The Hebrew name for Jerusalem is Yerushalayim. That dot belongs over here. This is a bad font in this regard. Yerushalayim. What's interesting, one thing that's interesting about it is that in the biblical Hebrew, it appears just this way. Whoop, not that. I don't want to do that. Apparently, its original name was something like Yerushalem, not Yerushalayim, Laim, but it developed over time into that form that we know now. Yerushalayim. Okay, and another interesting linguistic note on this place name. You know it as Haifa. Everybody knows it as Haifa. Unless you're a purist, or unless you're reading the weather report on Kol Yisrael, where they're required to use the Hebrew names and not the Arabic names for places here that are towns that have Hebrew names. So in Hebrew, Haifa. But again, Israelis know places by their their Arabic names from, a century and many, many centuries ago. So most people will talk about Haifa using the Arabic pronunciation, but it's Haifa in Hebrew. Here's something you used to see on a sign. Once there was a sign with a picture of an airplane and this on the road, on the main road between Tel Aviv and Jerusalem, telling you to get off at a certain exit. And it wasn't very helpful that what they wrote down in Latin characters on the sign was Natbag, N-A-T-B-A-G. You wouldn't know where you're going if you're looking for Natbag, because but we pronounce it as an acronym, as if it were Natbug, and it's the acronym for Nimal, port, Te'ufa, which is air travel, flying, Ben Gurion. The Ben Gurion airport is known to everybody here as Natbag. And one of the difficulties of learning modern Hebrew, modern spoken colloquial Hebrew, is that, especially from the army, there's an acronym for pretty much everything. So if you don't understand Zabashcha, that's 1970 slang for Zot Ba'aya Shelcha, that's your problem. Okay. We're going to move on. Right? Oh, let's sing a little bit. I'm not going to play you any silly videos. Let's just sing a little bit. Aliza Burton suggests, if you want to remember which one is sin, which one is shin, a sin is never right. The dot is on the left on sin. Aliza, that's really good. I'm going to have to collect all of these. Can we sing a bit? Hine ma tov u'mana'im shevet achim gam yachad. Put your hands around each other. It's virtual, so you can pretend and it's fine. You won't get, any viruses. Hine ma tov u'mana'im shevet achim gam yachad. Hine ma tov shevet achim gam yachad. Hine ma tov shevet achim gam yachad. We did some review. We talked a little bit about letters. We sang. Now it's time to really get down to business. I'm going to cover 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 different points about some consonants, some things about vowels, some things about spelling, to explain some of the mysteries. Okay, so don't imbibe any of that alcoholic stuff I invited you to bring to this class until you got this down, okay? There are 6 consonants which appear, and I've mentioned them. I gave you a daily double every time I think we saw them. 6 consonants that appeared originally as either a stop or a fricative. We learned that back in lesson 1. Right, a letter that's the air comes to a halt because we close off impede the airflow entirely, or one which we just kind of let it go, but it's a consonant because it's not a o e, it's something is blocking the air. So this was v, and this was a v, and this was v. This was g, and this was r, or something like that. We're not really sure. I'm not really sure. This was the, and this was this. Sorry, this was the, like a dental d, the, and this was a the, a voiced th sound. This was k, and this was ch, still is. This was p, and this was f. Well, as you know, the v and the f, which are the same thing, just this one has, you're using your voice box, and this one, the f, you're not. Those changed shape, so they became v and f with your labiodental, right, with your upper front teeth in the middle of your lower lip. But still, there are 2 forms, and this was t, the unvoiced version of the, right, with your tongue behind the back teeth and the top, t, and th. So it's not important to know that, but I want you to realize that this whole system of punctuating the words made sense for the way things were pronounced originally. What we need to remember is only these 3, and you've learned them already. B versus v. With gimel and dal won't make a difference. There'll always be g and d. The difference between k and ch, kaf and chaf, and the difference between pe and fe, this one won't matter. So there are only 3, you've learned them, of these 6, in which there were originally 2 different ways to pronounce this phoneme, this particular sound, either as a stop or as a fricative, and it doesn't really make much difference. But there were patterns. Okay. We're going to come back to other dots. Now we're going to deal with other dots in letters, because there are other reasons why we'll have dots in letters, as some of you have already noticed and asked about. So, item number 2 on consonants. There is, in the letter hey at the end of a word, a time when it actually does represent an H. But we better warn people of that, because most of the time, the hey at the end, as we've seen in toda and rina and all those other words, just means there's an vowel at the end. That was what it was there for. So once people invented a punctuation system, they invented a way of marking that with the ever popular dot in the word. This one has a different name, mapik, which is from the root npq, nepak, which is to go out, and mapik means to bring out. So you bring out the H sound, you actually expel air, you hear it. That is to say, in classical Hebrew. In classical Hebrew, people said shelah to say her or hers, yadah to say her hand. Today, you will not hear that H. The only time you'll hear that mapik pronounced in hey is if you're in a synagogue where people are reading biblical texts aloud, and there are crazy purists like my friends and me who insist that it has to be pronounced that way in classical texts. But that explains that hey at the end. It doesn't mean that you want to totally ignore it, because it does tip you off to something grammatical, which is that the ending is a feminine singular marker, usually possessive marker, right? Hers. Okay, so that's the story with the dot and the hey at the end of a word, the mapik. So for example, the word malka spelled this way with the dot is not the same as the word malka. We learned melech is a king and malka is a queen. And Malka is a girl's name, a woman's name. Well, Malka refers to HaMelech, the Ha is the Melech Shelah, her king, Malka. Again, today you won't hear a difference between Malka, queen, and Malka, her king, which unfortunately is a useful distinction that has been lost as contemporary Hebrew has flattened down a lot of distinctions. Ready to move on? You got that? Mapik in a hey at the end has to do with feminine singular marker, and it was originally pronounced as an H. Item number 3 on consonants. We're making good time here. Okay. Virginia, I appreciate your observation. Thanks. I think you're right. I got a little upbraided there for something I said. Yes, there is another, as somebody has already noticed. Bruce Gatterman, you asked, I wrote it down right here, asked me about why is the word Shabbat always transliterated with 2 B's? And the answer is gemination. Remember that, some of you know, or maybe old enough as I am to remember that after the original one-person space capsules, as we called them, right? Spacecraft for Americans, the Mercury series, and before the famous Apollo series, famous because there are all those movies, there was one with 2 people called Gemini the twins, right? In mythology. So gemination is doubling. And there are times when a consonant, for a variety of grammatical reasons, might be doubled in Hebrew. We have this in English too. The one example I always think of is roommate. This word, R-O-O-M-M-A-T-E, we write it with 2 M's, and we even hear a difference. It's not roommate, it's roommate. You hear the double M. And if you have other examples, I'll be really grateful. Because I used to keep a list of examples of words where you do hear the doubling when you join 2 words together, one of which ends with a sound that the next one begins with. So we have a verb, shalach, which means he sent. And there's a different word, shilach, which means he sent away. Cast your bread upon the waters, right? As Kohelet, Ecclesiastes says, that's this verb, not, send it like with, put postage on it. No, poof, send it away. When Moses goes to Pharaoh and says, let my people go, he doesn't say let them go. He'd be very passive. He would be very passive, allowing them to leave. No, what Moshe says to him is, shalach et amis, imperative form of this verb. Send them out. And again, in biblical Hebrew, one heard this as shalach. There are a number of constructions which require the doubling. There are some noun forms and some verb forms which require, if possible, the doubling of a letter. Some letters won't double. Nobody expects you to pronounce two H's in a row. You'll run out of air before the end of the word, right? But here's an example, a verb form diber or kiven. Now I chose diber because it's so common and because it has one dagesh that represents one of those big kefet letters, right? It was originally the and not the, and it had to be marked. This one is both the and not the originally, and it had to be marked because it was doubled. Here, look at this funny, this is a funny thing, right? Now, what do I do with this? Is that kiwen or what is that? Well, the answer is that if I have a vav with both a dot here on the left and another vowel below or above, then that is an indication that this is not u, and that dagesh, that dot here, is not the marker of a vowel, but this really actually is a consonant and doubled. So this was, in classical Hebrew, kiven, with a long v in the middle, and the word Shabbat. Okay, so we've seen three reasons why you might have a dotted letter: to distinguish the fricative from the stop, in which it still makes a difference in three of those six beged kefet, we call them letters. The mapik and a hey at the end of a word to tell you it's actually pronounced and has a particular meaning. And in a lot of places, you run into one where there is a dagesh in some other letter, like a lamed or a vav, and it has to do with doubling. Okay, here's an interesting one. This is a biblical Hebrew verb, iva. He wanted, he desired. And there's a line in the Psalms with a word that threw me for years. I couldn't figure out like what's going on here. What are all these thoughts? Iva means he desired it. It refers to the land of Israel as God's chosen land. He desired it for his own people. Iva. This was Iva. This was Iva. Today you would not hear a difference. Both would just be Iva. That's a lot of dots. Okay. I wish I could remember who asked me for that. Lou Soloway asked me, what about words where you get the ends with a consonant and a shva, and then another consonant and another shva? Like, what do I do with that? And that consonant at the end is a tav. There's a past tense form, feminine singular, second person feminine singular, which requires just adding t at the end of a verb. So you singular, let's sing. You singular said. You said is amarta. You, speaking to a single female, feminine singular object or addressee, amart. And we really just add a T sound. In many cases, it's pretty easy to do. Katavt, you wrote. Vayesht, which is a purely biblical form, not a modern Hebrew form, for he drank or and he drank. So it's pretty easy when it's a fluid sound like v or sh. Might be a little bit harder with some, or r might be a little bit harder with some others. But there it is. We just add the t. And yeah, it's a little bit weird to see those two in a row. Usually when you see two consonants in a row with a shva, the first one is going to be shvana, the kind that's mobile, that gives you that tiny bit of a vowel. Because Hebrew is not Polish. Hebrew doesn't like to bunch up vowels. It's terrible what happened to Polish. I think the Russians are responsible for having stolen all the vowels. And they gave them to the Hawaiians, who just used them to make diphthongs, so that's ridiculous. Okay, was that a bad joke? I promised bad jokes to people today. Vowels, we're going to do a couple of items on vowels. We've seen some semi-vowels where you have half a shva, half a vowel. Well, the truth is that a shva probably was always kind of a half vowel. People heard it like this. So when a form and Hebrew nouns and verbs will follow certain distinct patterns, always with the verbs and often with nouns, very distinct patterns. Sometimes the pattern will require that you put a stop somewhere. That you stop somewhere where you can't. For example, I can't say aleph and get to nun with just no sound, right? I got to get some vowels. So it gets written as a half vowel. It was originally something really short, like anachnu, right? Anachnu. But the first one was very short. Instead of a shva, to understand that it has to be something in there, because aleph doesn't give me any sounds, I got to have vowel. Similarly here, where I end with an ayin, which I close up my epiglottis for. We talked about that originally, right? When an ayin wasn't just a stop, but it had a sound made for injali. So I get a little bit of a vowel sound, ya-se, ya-se. You hear that? There's a little bit. I can't say ya with an ayin and then go into se without letting out a little bit of air, ya-se. So it was written as heard, but with less than a full vowel. And grammarians didn't treat it as a full vowel either. They really treated this as a two-syllable word, even though we all hear it in modern Hebrew as ya-a-se. You may know it from liturgy. You may know it from a song taken from the liturgy. Here's a biblical word with a kamatz pronounced as, oh my gosh, I totally forgot something really important. I'm going to erase this page in a moment or give you a new one and write something super important that I forgot to write down. So this is yo'omad or ya'omad. There's a debate about how to pronounce it. That's a half an o vowel, and why it's o I'll get to in a minute. Here we would expect le sof, but because it's an aleph and it's really hard to go from the glottal stop right to the s, I hear a bit of a vowel, le es sof. And I read it as half a vowel. And what was it that I was going to, that was really important that we do, that I forgot to put into my notes, and that is, there are times when you have a, that should go here, a closed, unaccented syllable with a kamatz, when it is actually, even in the Sephardi world, understood to be pronounced as an o. And the most common word in which that will appear will be, let me just steal some letters here so I can copy, will be this word. The word all, everything, is kol. Oops, sorry. Kol. Ha! Kol. But when it is hyphenated to another word, all of something, it becomes this. It doesn't get stressed. It's hyphenated to the next word. It's an unstressed syllable. And when a kamatz, that T-shaped vowel, appears in a syllable that isn't stressed and is closed, meaning it ends with a consonant, and it's always because there was originally an O or an U there, then it gets pronounced as an O sound and not an A sound. So this is kol. And it's a very, very, very common word, right? And it's got that medial O. Originally, it was something shorter than an O, but longer than an A, or some different shape. We're not really sure. But you will see, and it's going to be hard to spot, because who can stop and think about what's closed and unaccented and so on. It gets easier as you learn more grammar, and you can see when there was originally an O there. But we have lots of words in which kamatz is an O. And I will make a note of that in the Google Doc, which I didn't do yet for today. Whew, okay, very important. Second item on vowels is a review. We've seen this before, that under chet, when chet is coming up, or ayin is coming up, or it actually happens to be true with the matik hey too, the actual pronounced H, I'm going to hear a little bit of an ah sound before that sound. I have no way to write it. I have to write it after, as if it's to be pronounced after the consonant. So this, even though if you haven't learned the trick, you'd think is kocha, is koach. This you might think is yodea, but it's not, it's yodea. Right? People who pronounced it, well, let me do this right. People who pronounce an ayin, pronounce that ayin. I'm going to mess this up. I'm just going to go back and not mess with it anymore. I apologize. Yodea, right? The ayin actually is pronounced after the ah, but since we don't pronounce it much, you don't hear the difference. But here, this is a word that very educated, very trained native speakers almost always pronounce wrong when they bother to pronounce the H, like the news announcers on official government radio. They will say gavoha, but that's just wrong. It's gavoah. If you're going to pronounce the H, it comes after the A vowel, even though, because of the fact that I can't write two vowels between two consonants, I have to write it after, that is to say, under the hey. Okay? We've seen that before. It appears with ayin and chet and hey. Hey, we hadn't seen before. All right, we have talked about things related to consonants. We have talked about things related to vowels. And now we should do a little orthography. I know I should just call it spelling, but you know me. Okay, when you have, there are a couple of times where there's a silent letter, and not a silent aleph or a silent ayin as we pronounce it today, but a letter that looks like it ought to be there, and it's just there for grammatical reasons, and we do not pronounce it. Go figure. One of them is when you get a final kamatz, that T-shaped vowel, kametz, and then a yud, and then a vav. What's that about? That is pronounced not bimromoiv or something like that, or maiv, but bimromav. The yud is silent. Bimromav. It's there to show me that there was originally a yud mem ending that was a masculine plural ending. So it's not bimromo, it's bimromav. When I didn't have vowels, it was nice to have the yud there to tell me, oh, this is the plural form. But so kamatz yud vav is av, even though it looks like it should be oiv. Similarly, kedoshav, his holy ones, not kedoshayu or anything like that. Again, it has to do also with the fact that the vav was originally a wa, but we'll ignore that. This is for our purposes a silent yud. So when they tell you that Hebrew, like Italian or other languages, is, it's written perfectly phonetically, how can you go wrong? Well, it's a pretty good rule of thumb, but it's not always true. Another case is there's certain words, a certain form, but the words come up a lot where I just gave you two of them, a very particular form where sometimes you'll see it vocalized this way, and you'll certainly see it unvocalized. Sorry, I'm messing up here for you. Let's go back down. Sorry. Let's get the Hebrew font on there for you. If you see this verb unvocalized, with no vowels, then it looks like this. And it looks like heter or heter or whatever the heck it is. But in fact, it's heter and the yud is silent. There are a few of these. It's just this shape. Hey, yud, segol under the hey, the e vowel. And then a consonant, tsere, and another consonant. But they come up from time to time. There are a few of them, and some of them are fairly common words. A heter is a permit. Heged is a statement, something that someone says. So once in a while, you will find that a yud is silent. Go figure. It would have been so nice if it were so perfectly, what am I going to say? So perfectly phonetic in the way we spell and write things. I think, I'm not certain, but I think, I'm looking over my list as well, that we've covered the things that I thought of and a couple of things that you've thought of and sent me emails about, to ask about. I have to apologize. Slicha to Doro. What's that T with a gerish on it? F. It's not a letter, right? That's an apostrophe. Slicha Dorothy. Dorothy asked me to make some dad jokes today. I didn't have any dad jokes. I really, I probably should learn to refrain from them, but I'm incorrigible. Please don't encourage me. Dorothy, that was your joke. Okay. And I think we should conclude. We have a couple of things I'd like to do in conclusion. I think we should sing this song we started to learn, Shalom Chaverim, which is either hello friends or goodbye friends. Because maybe it's goodbye because it's lehit ra'ot. See you later, right? Au revoir. And if you remember the music we learned, it goes like this. And I really want you to sing. Don't be embarrassed. Nobody's going to hear you. Well, maybe around where you are they will, but we won't. Shalom chaverim, there's one of those. Shalom chaverim, shalom chaverim, shalom, shalom. Lehitraot, lehitraot, shalom. Shalom. Again, shalom chaverim, shalom chaverim, shalom, shalom. Lehitraot, lehitraot, shalom, shalom. I got a compliment on my voice. That's so nice. Let's see. I'm going to have a look for a moment and see. Did we cover the difference in T sounds between tet and tav? I think so. A dental t, tav originally, and a po sound in was tet. Stumbled on cursive. Do we need to learn those too? If you're not going to be writing notes, you don't need to know cursive. Or reading notes that are handwritten, in stores here or something, but it's pretty unusual. wasn't the founder of My Jewish Learning, Michelle, but I was on the team and it was really fun. How do you know when to use the vav with the dot on top and when just the dot on top of the O sound? Difficult. Vav with a dot on top or just the dot without the vav. Very often you'll see them back and forth with spelled full, the full spelling it's called with a vav or without. There isn't much difference. Biblical names are sometimes done one way, sometimes another way. You don't have to be concerned about it. Julie has posted for you in the chat the link to the Google Doc, so that's great. You probably just want to open it up and keep it open and make a note of it for yourself so you can go back to it. Slicha also mean excuse me. Yeah, Judy asks, does slicha also mean excuse me? It can be. It can be, yeah, you know, forgive my intrusion or whatever it is. Shalom, shalom, Yerushalayim. Root is Shin Lamed Mem. Yes, Yerushalayim seems to be the same as Shalem in the Bible, city of wholeness and peace and fullness. We like to think of it as city of peace. It does look awfully peaceful when you look at it. And it is pretty damn peaceful, actually, compared to any American city. You can walk anywhere and not be worried. I love watching Jerusalem go from dusk to dark outside your windows. Oh, that's so nice. Mnemonics from Eliza. Pay has a penny in it. The little round thing in the middle. Bet has a belly button. Eliza, I hope you're doing copywriting for a living. Otherwise, you're like in the wrong, or teaching small children. Let's see. Tobacco bookkeeper irresistible. What is that? I don't understand those things. Aloha. There's a lot of stuff I don't understand here. So again, is it ba'it or bayit, pronouncing house? Yeah, the word for house is bayit. The Y is a consonant. The yud is a consonant. Why do you sometimes hear the word Shabbat pronounced Shabbos? That's just Ashkenazi pronunciation. Accent on the first and not the second to last syllable. By as shab, and the word has a kamatz, which is pronounced as an o in Ashkenazi Hebrew, and a tav without a dagesh, which was in biblical Hebrew a th, became in Northern Europe a s. There were a lot of people who didn't have languages with th in them. So Shabbat, what we think of as Shabbat, which was originally probably in Tiberian Hebrew, Shabboth, became Shabbos. Shabbos. Let's see. Another example of commonly mispronounced furtive patach. Yes, Eloah. Julie is correct. There is a word Eloah, meaning a divinity, which most people pronounce Eloha, but it is Eloah because it stands with a hey with a dot in it and an under it.
That was Muriel who pointed that out.
Oh, good for her. I sent it to you. Okay. How do we pronounce the Pasha Emor? Asked Rachel. I'm sorry. Yeah, or Muriel. Emor. E-M-O-R. Yeah. Short E, long A, somewhere in the middle. Emor. I'm not sure why that would be hard. And again, I did a very American R at the end. Emor. In good Israeli Hebrew. What would be some good resources? Take a look. I have some suggestions on continued resources for continuing. They're not all that satisfactory, I think, but what I've got to offer is in the Google Doc. So have a look. I put that up there today. Adonai is Aleph Daled Nun Yud, the word that we use in place of the ineffable four-letter name of God. And it appears, oh, right. So since we don't say it, people have come up with all kinds of ways of abbreviating it or putting two yuds or a hey and a geresh, an apostrophe, or a dalet and an apostrophe. More recently, you'll see publishers of Jewish classical texts and liturgical texts putting the four-letter word in, but just not putting vowels on it because we don't know what the vowels were. And we will say Adonai usually. Nadine says, Teach Yourself to Read Hebrew by Simon and Anderson is a good book for review of this class. I have another one on suggestion on the list, but that's great. I'll try to remember that, Simon and Anderson. Are these files going to be there indefinitely? Julie, are these files going to be there indefinitely?
The Google Doc?
The Google Doc I will leave up. It's mine, and it's in my Google Drive, and I don't have any intention of it.
It is eternal.
Well, as long as I still have a Google account, yeah. And I think that goes to 1,000 years after you die, so I think we're good. Ginger asked me which words are similar to Ladino. I don't know any Ladino. I wish I knew. Ladino is the medieval Spanish dialect that Jews took around the world or all around the Mediterranean for sure. and even along the Atlantic coast when they were expelled, when they began to leave Spain at the end of the 14th century and then were expelled in the 15th century, end of the 15th. So Ladino does have Hebrew influences. How do we know when to pronounce the double dot under the consonant A like hey? When is it A? I think Paul is asking when is it A and when is it A? We don't have an A, long A sound that actually seems to have a Y at the end of it in contemporary Israeli Hebrew. So there you go. It's going to be A, not A. I think that at 14 minutes after the hour, it's time for us to raise a glass. And we'll be saying goodbye in a moment. But first, I want to thank Julie, who made all this happen, who searched the world to find me. I went to her, actually, to tell you the truth. But she agreed that maybe this would be something I would know how to do. I don't know why I duped her into that, but I studied really hard and learned all this stuff in the last 2 weeks. So you can raise your bubbly and l'chaim. And I penned a little ditty for you. I hope you like it. I had Bobby Sherman record it, and you'll hear it here in a second. This is a farewell for Julie. Here we go.
We had so much fun together.
Oops, gotta keep it going.
I was sure that you were mine, but leaving you, baby, is driving me crazy. It's got me wondering all the time.
You know this, right? I'm not going to make you listen to any more of that, but I'll put the link to that up because it's so classic. Is that great? The bell bottoms, the hair, love it. But Julie, l'chaim, thank you so much. It was really a pleasure. Little spritzer. Mine is seltzer and something from the Pri Hagafen, the fruit of the vine.